Hi, welcome to On Your Watch. My guest today is Amanda Augustine. She's a job search expert at The Ladders. On this part of the show, Amanda is going to tell us some tips for recent college grads, as well as tips for following up once you send in your resume in order to get that interview. Hi again.
Hello.
So, what is the first thing a recent college grad or a person who's just about to graduate should be getting into place?
So Christine, I have 3 tips, or let's try that again. I have 5 tips on what you should be doing in order to get a job. And number 1 is perfect your personal brand. And this is especially important for those who just graduated because you need to fix up that online profile and fix up your online presence.
What shouldn't you have in it?
So any photos of you doing things that are inappropriate that you wouldn't want your mother, your father, or your hiring manager to see. I actually recommend that you make a list of every site where you have a profile and decide, is it going to be for personal use or for professional use? If it's for personal use, remove the scary photos, untag yourself. I recommend increasing those security settings as well as changing your name to your first and middle name so nobody's going to see it. And if it's for professional use, you want to make sure it's updated so it's in alignment with your resume. If you do not have an online profile that's for professional use, this is the time where you want to create one of those and make sure it's really in alignment with your resume. The other part is that you need that offline presence to mimic the same. Everything has to have the same positioning. What I'm really talking about is your resume. I highly recommend investing in a professional resume writer that's going to help you create a targeted resume that's going to highlight your relevant skill sets and education as it relates to your job goals. At The Ladders, we say there are 3 things you should never do yourself. You don't write your own will, you don't do your own taxes, and you don't write your own resume. I won't write my own resume, and I'm a professional resume writer. It's really difficult to be objective. You want to include things that don't necessarily need to be there because of emotional attachment. Mm-hmm. You need somebody who knows how to turn that laundry list of tasks and skills into a crafted resume that's going to get past any gatekeeper, human or otherwise.
Okay, great. And you have a tip here, harnessing the power of 3.
Yes. So people like to do what's comfortable to them, what's the easiest. What I recommend, though, is that you need to pursue multiple channels if you're going to find the most leads that are relevant to you. So this includes applying and following up appropriately to online listings, whether they're on job boards, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever. Networking, both growing and nurturing your network with your professional as well as your personal contacts. You don't know who your best friend's mother's brother works for. May be very valuable. And third, actively targeting recruiters by reaching out to specific ones who are recruiting for the line of work that you're targeting, as well as creating a very polished online personal brand so they find you.
Terrific. Okay. And nurturing that network.
Nurturing that network. So it's so important. Any of these methods you're going to use when you're harnessing the power of 3, you want to use them in conjunction with one another. You're 10 times more likely to land that interview if your job application has an employee referral with it. Whether you have an advocate, somebody in your court who actually handed in your application to the hiring manager, or someone who simply lets you put their name into the online application. But to get those contacts, you have to build and grow a network that you know people who are in your relevant industry. So I recommend going online and offline to find networking groups and professional associations that are related to your industry or your specific line of work and getting involved in them.
How do you do this? How do you pick the right ones? What do you bring with you as a recent college grad? You might feel like you don't have the experience to do this, but should you be posting on LinkedIn if you only worked at the supermarket for 8 years, or?
92% of recruiters and hiring managers in a survey that was done this past summer said that they use social media in order to find candidates. 86% said, yes, I search a person's name whether they give me their profile information or not. So if you aren't creating that brand for yourself, it's just as bad as having a bad online profile. So yes, I highly recommend building up an online profile. I understand your experience may not be as relevant, but your education is there, as well as you can build your contacts so you can do that research and figure out what contacts are most important. In terms of finding the right groups, if we're talking offline, go to meetup.com, meetup.com, and that will allow you to find any group under the sun. You can Google sales, or you can search sales, you can search fishing, you can search whatever industry or line of work you're in, and I guarantee there will be at least one group somewhere nearby that you can become a part of. And for those things, you want to show up, you want to already know what you want to say about yourself. What type of role are you targeting and why? And the answer cannot be, it's because I need a job. That doesn't work very well. There has to be a reason, whether your education brought you to that, something about that industry that you find interesting, and that's what you need to bring forth, showing your passion. And come armed with questions. The best part is that you want to meet people and ask questions and find out from someone who's already been in your industry what's going on. If it's online, LinkedIn has a number of groups that are worth joining. You just have to do a simple search on their directory, as well as you can go to biztradeshows.com, biztradeshows.com, and that can show you where trade shows for any type of industry are all over the world. So you can look to see if there's something nearby, because even if you just show up with some business cards that you've created or some resumes and a portfolio and you're dressed and ready to talk to people, you can learn a lot.
So should you have business cards printed for yourself?
I'm a big proponent of business cards because it's awkward handing people your resume when it's a happy hour. It's not the right setting, but a business card is something small you can always pass on to somebody. It doesn't have to have your job title in a company. It has to have your contact information, and perhaps if you're a recent graduate, recent graduate of X type of degree, or targeting X type of roles. As long as it's something that has your contact information so you can swap information, that's the way to go.
What do you think about putting your photograph on your business card?
I'm not a big fan of the photograph on the business card. I haven't really read any rules against it. What I would say is that if you were going to put it on, it would have to be a professional headshot. It would have to it can't be a webcam shot. It can't be a shot of you and your puppy. So I don't know if it's necessarily worth spending the money when you're a recent college grad in order to do that. I think your money and your resources could be spent in other places. You're better off getting a really great resume that you can then translate into an online profile, as opposed to paying for a headshot for your business cards.
And how important is putting your LinkedIn address and having Twitter followers and putting the Twitter address on your business card?
So again, when you're thinking about your personal brand, if your Twitter account is for you to talk about what's going on in your fantasy football team, then it doesn't need to be on your cards, because it has nothing to do with your job search. It's diluting your brand because it is not supporting your personal brand, which is all about what are you great at and passionate about and what type of job are you targeting. In terms of your LinkedIn profile, I do recommend putting that on, both your resume as well as your business card. They're going to Google you. They're going to look for it anyway. You don't want them to confuse you with someone else with a similar name who has a very different profile that may be very, very bad.
Okay, great. Now, mastering the art of the informational interview.
Yes. If you are a college grad or you are looking to change jobs radically, the informational interview is your best friend. Now, there's one caveat. You need to build your network so you have people to actually have these types of meetings with. But the idea behind it is that you find individuals who are working in a company, an industry, or a line of work that you really want to get into. And the idea is to approach them, offer to take them out for a cup of coffee to pick their brain. You're never going in asking for a job. You're going in to gain information. That's why it's an informational interview. And the idea is that you want to learn about what's going on in that company, how did that person get into that company, as well as projecting your own personal brand.
Great, okay. So what questions would kind of finesse that information out of them without making you look so aggressive that you really need a job?
Right. I mean, the point is that it's supposed to be a casual conversation. That's why you're taking them out for a cup of coffee and you're not sitting in a small room, you know, sitting very straight asking questions, right? It's supposed to be a relaxed conversation. Luckily, most people love to talk about themselves, and that's really what this is about. Asking them, you've been working at Johnson & Johnson for 15 years. How did you get into that industry in the first place? How did you end up at Johnson & Johnson? Mm-hmm. What do you like about it? Is there anything about that culture that you find very unique or that you're very proud of? The idea is you want to start getting those clues so you understand the hiring process, kind of how they tend to manage careers, as well as what skills you may need to fill in because those are must-haves for that company or that industry. So again, it's just all intel that you can use to be a better job seeker.
And you're learning that company culture so that when that executive looks at you across his desk, he sees someone that's a match for that position.
Exactly. And hopefully, now that you've had this meeting and Bob from Johnson & Johnson knows how wonderful I am and how excited I am to work in that industry and how proactive I am in learning about it. If a role opens up at that company, hopefully I'm the one he thinks of and he'll pass that along. And now I probably have an employee referral, which increases my chances of getting a call back.
Great, okay. But you don't have to say, hey, look, after your coffee date, hey, look, I'm interested in this company. That's kind of understood.
No, it's understood. Okay. If you're asking about it and you genuinely, the idea is not to walk in and say, what can you do for me? That you are doing something for them. If anything, you're trying to pay it forward.
Okay. We're down to the last minute and a half of the show, goodness. Unfortunately. Okay. So I wanted to talk quickly about following up. You mentioned that at the bottom of your cover letter, when you submit it, mm-hmm. you should write, I will follow up with you in a week's time or in a certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. So what do you do when you actually go ahead and follow up after submitting your resume and your cover letter to that position?
So it's not always possible. I understand that. Sometimes it's confidential and there's nothing you can do. But when you know, or you can do a little detective work, a little Googling and figure out who's behind the job, you do want to follow up either via email or with a phone call. And it's a casual conversation, it's a friendly conversation, it's a short conversation, but it's very professional. My name is Amanda Augustine, and I applied for the Director of Career Services role at your company 1 week ago. I just wanted to confirm that my application made it through, and I had a few follow-up questions. Do you have a couple minutes? And basically, that's how you get it started.
An example of a good follow-up question?
I was curious as to what are the top 2 goals for somebody who gets this job to accomplish in the next year.
Very good. Okay. Yeah. This has been Amanda Augustine. She's the career and the job search expert at The Ladders. Thank you so much for coming today on Your Watch.
Thanks, Christine.
It's been wonderful having you.
Thank you.